Well, hello to anybody who may watch this. Today I'm going to make a video about going over my most recent and to date my most successful meet. So a couple weeks ago I competed at Baines Barbell in an XPS federated meet. I got 1455 total at 212.9 body weight, so that leads to a 412.96 dots. Not that that matters because dots isn't real, but just to give you a couple numbers for what I did. I squatted 545, I benched 325, and then I deadlifted 585. And all of those numbers were PRs, so very successful meet for myself. And I want to go over, I'm going to kind of go over quickly like how the squats, benches, and deadlifts went, and then kind of a training takeaway that I thought so far has led to the success that I've had in pushing up those lifts. So obviously we're going to start with the squats first. I guess I should say we should start with maybe the day before quickly and then going into the squats. So we weighed in pretty much first thing in the morning. On Saturday, this was a Sunday meet. I hadn't just eaten everything in the morning. After that, we got myself and other members of our gym. We went and we got breakfast, and then I just ate all day on Saturday. I didn't know what I weighed on actual meet day, but I was trying to blow it up and have as much food in my system the day before before actual Sunday, because generally I can't eat a lot on the actual meet day. I'm just too nervous, excited, getting things going, so it's generally pretty tough for me to eat. One way that I have been able to mitigate that and mitigate being hungry is eating a lot more the day before. I definitely might have overdone it. There may have been some close bathroom issues or close to bathroom issues on my last warm-up squats and maybe all three of my attempts. However, we'll just say that disaster was avoided, even though we were close. A lot of that came from just being so full from the day before. Okay. Anyways, we'll move forward. We'll move to the actual fun part now of squats. So my first squat was 500-pound opener.
Let's see it, Joe!
Again, so warm-ups leading up to the opener were feeling pretty good. I was feeling pretty ready to go. I didn't think anything was going to be too much of a trouble. However, I did learn a lot. So I have been competing in knee wraps my past couple meets. I really like it. It's a lot more fun. I did get different knee wraps for this meet. So I'm actually going to go grab them and show you the difference. I had two different pairs of knee wraps, both of these from Elite FTS. This black and white pair has been a pair that I've used for my past couple meets, and this thicker all black pair is the ones that I was using or planning on using for this meet. Now, for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to continue to warm up in these wraps and then actually do my attempts at squatting in my black wraps. These ones being a little bit newer, a little bit more heavy duty, a little bit more thicker. And I'll kind of get into the problems with that in a second. And like I said, I thought it was a good idea. However, the feeling, and I was doing that in training, so it's not like I just I did that in the competition for the first time. However, I was kind of describing to everybody in my gym that the squats were feeling a little bit weird the whole time leading up to the meet. So I was kind of like, I'm not 100% sure how squats were going to go. Those was the lift that I was the least confident in heading into it. Now, I figured out on meet day, partially that was because I was using 2 of these different wraps. So these ones are a lot more elastic and provides a lot more rebound, but less stopping power. These ones are thicker and have a lot less elastic stretch to them, but provide more stopping power, okay? So how that manifested itself is you just saw the 500-pound squat, you saw me wiggle pretty good. So that rep didn't feel hard necessarily, but I essentially felt like my toes lifted up or were very close to lifting up off the floor, even though visibly I don't think you could actually see my toes lift up off the floor at all. Now that actually happened on my last, my peaking squat attempt also. Is that one I actually did feel like my toe was off the floor for that attempt on my right foot with these wraps. So what I figured out was, like I said, between those, my first and second attempt, I figured out these ones have more of the elasticity in them. These ones have more of the stopping power in them. So these ones are gonna let my knees travel further over my toes and then just give me more of that bounce out of the bottom. But this one is actually gonna prevent my knees from compressing and moving forward as much. So what I had to do between my first and second attempts is I kind of guessed, and I was just like, I think I'm gonna have to make a technical change. Let's see if this works. So normally, I put the bar basically right on my rear delt. I'm not like in a super low bar, I'm kind of in a medium bar. So before the second one, I put the bar up a little bit higher, okay? More like, not like high trap, but kind of in the middle of my traps there. What that higher bar position allowed for was for me to be a little bit more over my toes. That extra weight actually helped me stay grounded with my feet on the floor, and then I got a way better and more stable and steadier second attempt, which I'll show you right here. Was 535, which ties a all-time PR for myself, and would have been a 5-pound meet PR. And it felt way smoother. It moved pretty good, not super quick, but it moved okay. And either way, it felt way steadier. Not gonna lie, not to just pat myself on the back here, but I was kind of proud that I could make a technical change in between my first and second attempt that actually allowed me to get more weight on the bar. I really, you never know, but I don't know if 535 and 545 for my last one really would have been there had I not put that weight up a little bit higher in my neck so I could stay grounded and actually more balanced for my second and third attempts. So I was pretty happy with how my second attempt went, and then I was really happy how my third attempt went, because that was a 10-pound all-time PR, and then adding 15 pounds on my best total for the squat. So here's that.
Yeah, Jim Farina's on sack. Justin is in the hole. Jim Specker is fourth out.
So overall takeaways for squat training leading up to this meet. I wouldn't say that I necessarily did anything special about training for the squats. I definitely know and understand I need more practice in my specific knee wraps. Make sure I understand those technical points. And now I understand this was my first time that I really used a different style of knee wraps, and really started to understand the difference between that stopping power, again, really preventing any further joint compression, and elasticity, actually providing more of that elastic rebounds out of the hole for the squats. So when it comes to training points, I'm gonna say know your weaknesses and understand transference. I know that sounds like 2 points, we're gonna kind of explain both. So know your weaknesses. I think so far leading up to this meet, and my deadlift has been relatively worse than my squat. They've been, relatively close, but again, I think relatively, and compared to other guys in our gym, my deadlift has been worse than my squat. So these past couple meets, I started to put a lot more into my deadlift training, because while I'm doing that, I'm picking things, and I'll get into this in the deadlift training section a little bit more, but I'm picking good mornings, bent over rows. I was doing, a lot more good morning style exercises, heavy chest supported rows, GHRs, reverse hypers, those things. But my intent and my thought process was this was all to help my deadlift, and then in turn, those things transferred, still helped me go get my squat up. Now it's been a slower and more of a creep up increase in my squat, because I haven't necessarily been doing too much extra, volume of squats and all that, but that's because I've been saving that for my deadlift training, extra RDLs, stuff like, extra weighted back extensions, stuff like that, okay? So I understood that my deadlift was weaker than my squat relatively, but I also understood that if I continue to focus on the deadlift, those exercises will still transfer to my squatting power and strength. That's not the same for everybody, depending on how people pull, depending on how their body proportions are actually are. That's not going to be the same for everybody. Some people need to work more on the squat, and that's going to transfer into their deadlift a little bit more, and vice versa. You have to kind of experiment and figure that out for yourself. And recently, over these past couple meets, I feel like I have figured out, focus on my deadlift. My squat will continue to creep up with that. Relatively, I need to work on my deadlift more, again, like especially compared to other people in our gym right now. But then, that is ultimately going to lead to the biggest increase in my total, because my squat's going to creep up, but my deadlift's going to go up exponentially. If that ever changes in the future, then I'll deal with that when I get there. Alright, so now since I'm going to talk about the bench press, it seems more appropriate to sit down, save some energy, and sit on the bench. So, my bench was probably the lift that I was the most confident in going into this meet, because I had set a bunch of personal PRs in training leading up to this meet, and I still felt like I had a decent amount in the tank. So this prep, it was the first time I hit 315, and that was I've hit more than that with the slingshot, but when it comes to raw bench pressing, it was the first time I've hit 315. And then the next week, that was actually going to be my peaking bench press. Then I hit 320, and I still felt like I had a little bit more in the tank. So I was feeling pretty confident going into this meet. So I opened up at 300 pounds. That felt like no problem. This was also probably the time where I've done the least amount of warm-up sets walking out to the bench press. So again, I feel like that saved a lot of energy and was just further psychological confidence that I was in such a good spot. I mean, normally even on warm-up I would go, bar 135, 185, 225, 255, 275, and then I would be around 285, 295 for my opener. One time 295 is when I actually bombed out. Don't worry about it, we won't have to talk about that. But this was one of the first couple cycles where I was like, meet prep cycles where I went 135, right to 225, right to 275. Didn't need any handoffs and was feeling really good for it. So again, those types of things are what really built up a lot of confidence. This was the heaviest weight that I've ever opened with. I felt like it was really good. Then I went right to 315 after that. again, didn't really feel like 315 was too much of a problem, and then went to 325 right after that. So now getting into bench training, what's the thing that, what did I learn the most about getting ready for this meet when it comes to actually peaking bench and getting stronger with bench press? I would have to say understanding your failure point and then being honest with yourself enough to actually work on it. So a lot of the times when I was failing bench presses, it was really on the chest or close to off the chest, and I could just feel that like tension in my shoulder and chest area. So I really put a lot of effort into picking accessories that built up that area. A lot of people talk about triceps for bench pressing and all that, and that's 100% true, but you only need to work on your triceps, or you only need to put extra energy into your triceps if that's your actual weak part, right? Mine was my chest and shoulders. So things that I was doing on my accessory movements or supplemental movements are, I was doing dead stop floor press. So really strict, let my elbows relax on the floor, try to press it up from that. I could, like, where my arms and elbows rest on the floor is like right at the sticking point. But the trick too with that is I wasn't cheating it. If it got heavy, when it was getting heavy, I really still had to stick that on the floor and then press it up. If I failed the lift, which I didn't do too many times in this training, then I just failed the lift. But it's that developing that tension and that strength in the range of motion that you are the weakest at. The next thing that I did a lot of was dumbbell bench press, working up heavy, going sets to failure, 5 sets to failure. So I would do, I did 5 weeks in a row, or was it 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100? So I guess I did 6 weeks in a row. Start 1 week starting with 50s, 5 sets as many as I could. 60s, 5 sets as many as I could. 70s, 5 sets as many as I could. Once I got to like 80s and 90s we're starting to drop it down to 3 sets, but still as many as I could. One day I did that on flat bench, the other day I did that on incline bench. Then after that I would do deficit push-ups. I would do 100, however many sets it took me to get to 100, and I just blew up my chest and shoulder area. That type of high volume failure training has always really helped me. I can't do 1,000 sets of it, but like if I'm getting between maybe like that 10 to 15, 20 sets, even if they're all close or at failure, then I'm doing good. That's the type of workload that I really need to develop that. And again, it seems like the bench, it's the most like muscle bodybuilding specific lift out of the big three. Just treating it like old school classic bodybuilders, focusing on the muscle, focusing on building muscle, and focusing on building muscle around that shoulder is what really helped me the most. Back exercise is definitely important, but even leading up to this, I didn't necessarily feel like I lost a lot of arch, I lost a lot of back tension during my presses when I failed. I just literally didn't have the chest strength to get it off my chest or accelerate it from that dead stop position. So, moral of the story, if you use failures whenever you fail a lift as feedback, and you take away, what you should take away from failures of a lift, then it's not really, a failure of a lift. It's just like a checkpoint. It's just a feedback mechanism, okay? Learn what you need to learn from each failure point, and a lot of that is, okay, where did I fail? What started to break down? And then how do I fix that? So when it comes to the weights, 300 would have been a tie for a total, putting me in a position to tie a total or PR bench press for my total. I had gotten 305 in an unofficial meet before that, so it wasn't quite a meet PR. But then 315, that already gave me an extra 15 pounds on my total, and then 325, that already put me in position, 25 pounds up on my bench press. And honestly, this was one of the times where bench pressing was the most fun. And that's another thing that I've kind of figured out. I need to kind of have fun with bench press, joking around a little bit. I can be pretty serious and locked in for squat, pretty angry for deadlift, but I almost have to go be unemotional and not really care about how bench goes, because if I go into the bench press with the same psychological energy I go into the lower body lifts for, I'm gonna burn myself out, and it hasn't really helped me that much. Like every time I get like angry, crying, serious for bench press, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I have to kind of be loose and have a little bit more fun with it. Alright, so now that we're all moving on to the deadlift, we're gonna just stand on our deadlift platform, even though we got a bunch of crap all around it. I don't really feel like cleaning up and moving it, so I just won't right now, but it's okay. It's not in the way. Whatever. So, deadlifts was probably the lift that I was the second most confident in going into. And again, that was, mentioning what I mentioned in the squat section. It's because I've been focusing and putting a lot more of my effort into the deadlift, making a lot more of my accessories and supplemental lifts with the desire of deadlifting. Right? Now, again, this is kind of ties in bench press point, where you need to know where you're failing. In January, we had an unofficial meet here with Corey, Pure Performance Institute. Hey, look him up. There's a shout out. He hosted a meet here. We did it as a gym. I tried to get 575 up. That was my third attempt, and I got it around to my knees, and then I stalled out. Okay, cool. Well, not cool, but you know what I'm saying. However, again, I used that as my feedback, so I picked better supplemental lifts for this meet prep, knowing that that's where I failed, okay? Like, it could be sometimes it's a technical issue. This time, I had done the work to know that it was an actual strength issue, okay? So, I picked our, log RDLs. Those became one of our favorites. Just with a strongman log, doing RDLs there really made it hard to lock out at the top. We did those versus chains. I did a lot of good mornings, all those types of things to help strength, heavy pen lay and bent over rows. So I was really picking those exercises to help strengthen my deadlift, and like I mentioned in the squat, they in turn helped my squat also. Okay? So moved into my opener for deadlift, which was 545. Now at this point in the meet, I was getting a little bit tired, but that wasn't affecting me too much. I was just drinking some extra caffeine. Knew that this was the home stretch. This is where I needed to kind of put up or shut up to get a PR total, because I was in such a good position, having an extra 15 pounds in my squat, an extra 25 pounds in my bench press. This was, either do it or lose it on the deadlift. So I opened at 545. Like I said, went pretty smooth. Was thinking, okay, we're in a good spot. Let's go for it. Let's go right to 585. Okay. So this is my first attempt at 585. As you can see, I basically had it all the way locked out, and then this hand, my right hand, started to come undone, and then it just dropped out of my hand right before I could really get my hips through for any substantial amount of time for them to be able to tell me to put the weight down. So that was pretty frustrating. I was like kind of like, damn it for a second. But then once I got back around the warm-up room getting ready for my third, I told the judges, okay, I'm just gonna go for the score table, I'm just gonna go for it again. I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to get that. My body felt strong enough to be able to do the weight. I needed to be very deliberate with my grip set up. Okay, so on my second time trying it, which is the third attempt, which you see here. Very deliberate about going down, setting this hand, really setting this hand. It's not that I wasn't paying attention to my grip before, but I paid extra attention to it for this third attempt. I also did a little bit more baby powder, a little bit extra chalk, just trying to pull out all the stops that I could to be able to pick up this last deadlift, to really make a big difference, a 40-pound difference in my total. So it's pretty cool. Definitely moving forward, I feel like I nailed a lot of things when it came to the exercises of deadlift training, but now I want to put a little bit extra grip work into it so I can have a little bit extra room for error. I felt like everything that I did leading up to it, again, picking the right accessories, using the feedback of, okay, where do I fail, and then picking supplemental and accessory movements to strengthen those areas, that worked great. It felt like everything in my body could pick up more weight, but it felt like my hands couldn't. So again, using this as feedback moving forward, I'm going to do extra deadlift specific grip work so I can try to fix that moving forward and pull even more weight. So overall, it was a really fun meet, very well run. We had a really good time. A couple of our kids, Nick Ransom, Carmen Tarico, they did the meet also. They all set PRs for themselves, so they did really good. Lots of good takeaways, but every meet is like a checkpoint. It's like learning more about weightlifting. It's experimenting. Does this work? It's more feedback and all that moving forward, so we can, myself as a strength coach, it helps make me a better strength coach and understand weightlifting and all that stuff, a lot better, so I can teach it and provide more value to our clients. So overall, really good. Now, moving forward to our next adventures.